Welcome to the Wealthy Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Perry. And as always, I'm pumped to be here because honestly, podcasting is one of my very favorite things. Let's be honest, the online space probably feels a little bit crowded right now. Even if you're brand new and you're just getting started, it might feel a little bit like opening day at the ski hill. Now, I say that because if you're not a skier, you're like, well, is opening day busy? Yeah. I just actually had opening day at my ski hill and it was packed and it wasn't even a powder day. So it was crowded. Okay. Now, why is the online space so crowded? Well, it was really only bound to get more crowded, to be honest. Pre-COVID, it was a lot less crowded, but it was still building. When I started my business in 2012, a lot less people online, but the online world, I realized, had so many opportunities. And I mean, it's just crazy the amount of money you can make online, the way you can build a business. Like, I knew that it wasn't going to be secret forever. And I knew people would eventually find out about how amazing working online was. And COVID just really accelerated that. So I knew everyone was going to find out eventually, but definitely COVID accelerated this by essentially pushing a ton of people online. Okay. And regardless of COVID, I think this would have happened anyways. I just think maybe it would have happened in like 5 or 10 years later, something like that. Who knows? We'll never know. But even without COVID, and how awesome that was pushing, lockdowns and pushing everyone online, social media in general has been building, right? So in 2020, Facebook had 2.8 billion monthly active users. By 2024, it's now at 3.065 billion, right? That's an additional 265 million users over 4 years. It's crazy, right? So, like, more and more people are going to keep using social media. And it's similar with Instagram, right? So, in 2020, Instagram had 1.07 billion users. By 2024, they have 1.4 billion users. So, increase of about 330 million users. Okay. So, as social media has gained more traction and gained more users, similarly, the coaching industry has actually expanded. So in 2019, there was 71,000 active coach practitioners globally, 71,000, okay? 2023, we're looking at 109,000-ish, so that's a 54% increase, okay? And then projections indicate that by the end of 2024, so right now we're in 2025, so we don't have this data yet, but hopefully we will soon, that the number of active coach practitioners could reach approximately 145,000. So that's essentially doubling since 2016, or sorry, 2019. So it is getting more crowded, it is getting more saturated, but that being said, you can still stand out online and have a very successful business. But what this does mean is you can't half-ass it, right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm do a little bit of this and a little bit of this. Like, if you want this, if you want to have an online business, you need to be exceptional, meaning that you need to stick with it. You need to keep at it. You need to work hard, and you need to take my advice from everything I'm about to tell you in this episode. Okay. So the big question is, how do we stand out online when there is so many, not only people, right? Because it's not just business owners making content, right? We have content creators and then just the average day human who wants to post pictures of their family, their cat, their dog, whatever, right? So what I want to do today is go through 3 different strategies that are going to help you stay noticed, stay top of mind, and hopefully become someone that your audience can't live without, and someone of whom's content, this doesn't make sense, I don't make sense, but someone who they want to consume your content, right? They want to interact with you, and if you were to disappear from social media, they would notice, right? Okay. So this is really important. I've talked about this before in other episodes, but it's worth saying again because sometimes we need to hear things a ton of times before it actually sinks in. And I believe that if you can't do this, then you will not be successful online. And that is infusing your unique personality into your online content, right? Your personality is your secret sauce, right? When you are just yourself, that gives you a competitive edge, right? Because people buy you, right? They don't just buy your product or service, right? They buy you because they like you, they connect with you. Like, I'm sure when you've invested in a coaching program or some sort of, program based product, like online digital product. Obviously, this is different for physical products, but even then, maybe you just like the founder, right? We just kind of connect with people. There's that, unsaid thing, that je ne sais quoi about someone that we just like. And we're like, I like this person. I want to work with them, right? So when people are looking at you and other coaches, when they're comparing you, and they are, right? People do have choice. They are comparing you. They're looking at their options. If they're looking at two programs that are similar, they're probably going to naturally end up buying from the person they just kind of connect with a little better, who they feel like is a little bit more their vibe. Okay. And this isn't to say that you need to be a people pleaser. That's very inauthentic. I actually think people pleasing is like the ultimate inauthenticity, right? Because then we're just trying to be someone we're not. We're trying to be what other people want us to be, and we're not actually being ourselves. So it's not about people pleasing and trying to accommodate everyone. It's just about standing in your power and being you, so that people can see your personality and they have the opportunity to decide if they connect with you or not. And some people won't, and that's okay. You're not for everyone. I'm not for everyone. Okay. So you do not want to sound like a corporate professional robot. That's the first piece of advice, right? You want to embrace your quirks. You want to share your opinions. You want to be as authentic as possible. And I get it. It can feel weird to be authentic, right? To show your personality when you are alone in your office talking to a screen, just like I am doing now, right? I'm sitting in my office. I got a computer in front of me, a couple lights around me, but I'm completely alone. And yet I am giving you my personality. Now, this didn't happen the first time I jumped online, right? I was very awkward at first. I was very uncomfortable. I have developed the skill over the 10 years plus that I have been in business. Okay. Now, back when I first started, right? Because I started out as a health coach. I was a functional health coach. And, I was teaching all this really nerdy stuff. I was really into it. And I really thought I needed to show up and be this super uber professional version of myself, like very academic, very straightforward. And I had no personality, right? Like no personality at all. I was just kind of a robot version of myself. And it didn't feel good just because I'm not really like that. I would say I'm not a professional person in that, I'm kind of weird. I'm rough around the edges. I swear. I have a dry sense of humor. I like sarcasm. Like I can be really silly. It just wasn't me, but I thought that's who I needed to be. And I did that for, I don't even remember how long. It wasn't that long because it really just kind of started to feel icky, and it was exhausting trying to show up and, and I was in this like collared like blouse, like pinned up to the top, like looking like a professional. And one day I just showed up in my toque. For you Americans out there, that is a beanie. For my Europeans out there, that is a cap. But honestly, the best word for it is a toque, right? It's a Canadian word, and everyone in Canada needs a toque because it's fucking cold. Anyway, so it was winter. I was wearing my toque. I was wearing my hoodie. And I showed up and I just talked like I talked. And I dropped a few fuck bombs. And I remember some people really came for me. People were really upset. They're like, who is this? Like, I've been following you for a while. Like, who is this? Blah, blah, blah. And like, what a stupid hat you're wearing. And I was just like, obviously it affected me at the time. I hadn't built the resilience that I have now. I've built a lot of resilience now. I've built up kind of like tough outer skin. People can say a lot of shit to me online and it just kind of bounces off me. I'm like, whatever. But yeah, it did upset me at the time. But that to me was the better option versus like trying to be this weird professional corporate version of myself that literally wasn't even a real human. Okay. So the more you are yourself, the more you will attract people that like you. I don't get a lot of hate anymore for my swears, for the way I talk, just because it's so transparent in my content that people who don't like that sort of thing very quickly see that and they can just go follow someone else. That's fine. Every now and then I do get, an angry email because I said fuck in an email. And you know what? That's okay. We just delete and block those people because you know what? Everyone swears. Get over it. But I'm not for you, and that's cool. So being authentic will help you stand out online because truthfully, there's no one else like you. We're all different. We all have different energies, different vibes, different senses of humor. We all have different stories. We have different experiences. So we are all different from each other. And so really that's your greatest tool for standing out online. And like I said before, I really believe that you are going to have a really hard time in the online space if you can't be yourself because people just want real people, right? Like for example, like in health and wellness, when people are sick and they're trying to heal themselves, like they don't want like a corporate robot talking to them. They want someone who can get on their level, someone who can maybe make it fun, maybe give them a laugh as they, deal with their acne or whatever it is. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you some action steps here because you've probably heard this a lot. I feel like a lot of coaches talk about this. It's just like, just be yourself. But you're like, what does this actually mean? Okay. So I'm going to give you some very specific action steps here. So the first thing is that we need to identify what our voice actually sounds like, right? We go through life, we have a voice, we have a personality, but rarely are we actually reflecting on it, right? We're noticing the personalities and voices of other people, but we're not always looking at ourselves, okay? So you really want to reflect on what makes you you, your quirks, your values, your sense of humor, right? The topics that you're really passionate about, the things that you stand for and don't stand for, whether it's related to health and wellness or something else. Like maybe you hate bad drivers, then hate bad drivers. Like express that in some way, shape, or form, right? So you can do a little journaling exercise. You can sit down and write down like 5 different descriptive words about your personality. Like, how would you describe yourself? Are you bold? Are you funny? Are you relatable? Are you passionate? Like, and if you struggle with this, ask your friends and family, right? Ask how they would describe you. This can be a really insightful activity. Okay. The second thing you can do is share personal stories. Okay. So these are personal stories from your journey, right? Because most of the time, not always, but most of the time, we are our own client or we were our own client, meaning that, if you help women in their 30s with acne, maybe that's because you were a woman in your 30s with acne and you healed, right? So share those stories, the ups and downs, like the moments, right? Like maybe when you were in the doctor's office and the doctor's office was like, I'm going to give you a 3-month course of antibiotics. And how did that make you feel? And did you take them? And did it help? Like, what was the emotion that went into that? Right. So, again, it has to be relevant because everything we do online is for the person we serve. And people always want to know what's in it for them. And so, even when we're sharing personal stories about ourselves, it needs to be relevant. Relevancy is very key here. This is the key word. It has to be relevant. There has to be something in it for them. So, what's the lesson, right? We don't want to just use social media as a dumping ground, like tell a story with no point, but what's the lesson, right? Like, how did you overcome this personal obstacle? And how can that help your audience? What can they learn from your struggle and your story? And if you are having a hard time coming up with the lesson in a story, honestly, just ask my life coach, AKA Chat GPT. This will help. Give them the story, say, what are some lessons that my audience can take from this? Okay. I do this all the time. It's very helpful. Okay. The third thing you can do is show behind the scenes content. Okay. So, day in the life stuff. This is really great to share on things like Instagram stories. Okay. This is a great thing for behind the scenes. Just show people what you're up to throughout the day. You can take a little video, you can take a little photo, that sort of thing. And that really shows the human side of you, right? If you come follow me on Instagram and watch my stories, you're going to quickly learn that I love snow, I love mountains, I have a son who I lovingly call LD, aka little dude, right? I share baby content, although I never actually share the face of my son. I share cooking stuff. I share content about my shameless love of all reality TV, right? And so you will learn those things about me, and that humanizes me. Okay. That helps build personality and connection. The fourth thing you can do is use conversational language. Okay. Really, the way that you talk to your audience should be really how you would talk to a friend. So if you were sitting in a coffee shop with your bestie and you were chatting about just life and shit and whatever, what would you talk about? How would your voice sound? So we want to drop jargon. We want to drop like nutrition coach speak. What I mean by that is technical language, right? Academic language. People don't talk like that. We want to just like kind of talk like we were talking to a friend, right? So use phrases that you would use in real life, right? Like, how would you actually talk? Think about it. Okay. Next is to show your vulnerable side. Now, everyone's talking about vulnerability, and you don't want to be gross with your use of vulnerability. You don't want to just be vulnerable to try to get something from someone, but know that your vulnerability actually helps and support your audience, helps and supports your audience, right? It serves your people because it makes it safer for them to be vulnerable, it also helps them to see their story in someone else. Okay. So, again, we don't want to use social media and our content as a dumping ground for all our negative and toxic emotions. We have to always come back to relevancy. It must be relevant. But again, what's a very real and raw story that you can share about the struggle that you've personally had with your health? Okay. I do this in my own content. I tend to tell the same stories, but you keep coming back. So obviously you don't mind. But, I think of like the first time I launched, it was a huge disaster. I thought it was going to make me $15,000 and it didn't. And I had never considered the fact that it wouldn't work. Right. I was getting pumped up by the business coach I was working with at the time, who sort of set me up to fail in some ways. She taught me a lot, but she also set me up to fail. And I was just like, oh, I'll make $15,000. This is happening. And I was so excited. And when I only made 1,500, I was like so devastated. Like, I don't think I've ever cried so much. Right. And now that story is real and vulnerable. I like to talk about how, I was like in the fetal position on the cold bathroom floor because our house at the time was being heated by the fireplace, and the heat of the fireplace never made it to that upstairs room. So I was like on this cold tile bathroom floor in the fetal position, just crying. And I was surrounded by these stupid yellow Post-its that said $15,000 all over them because I was trying to manifest. And I put these stupid yellow Post-its with $15,000 on them all over my bathroom and my office. And I was just surrounded in them. And I just felt like a total failure, and I was just like ugly crying. And I just was so shocked because it had just never occurred to me that I wasn't going to hit my goal. Okay. But I learned a lot from that. Okay. So do you see what I just did there? Like, that was a very vulnerable share, but it's relevant to you because you are someone who you're here because you want an online business, you want a group coaching program. You've probably launched before and failed, or maybe you are afraid to launch because you're afraid of failure. And so it's relevant to you, right? I'm not sharing some other story that has nothing to do with you and that you can't connect to. So you want to be intentional with the vulnerability that you share, and always infuse that like learning piece. Like, what can your audience actually learn from you? And what can they take away from it? Okay. And then finally, this is super important. If you don't do this, you really have no place in online business. You got to use your own face and your own voice. Okay. There was this sort of rise of faceless marketing that kind of worked for a while. I actually think that's going to go away in 2025 again. Um, I think there might be a place for it with certain products, like physical products, but when we're talking about online transformation and coaching people, um, you need to show your face. You need to show your face because there are so many stories. I've heard quite a few stories recently about certain online coaches or practitioners that never showed their face ever and preached a big game. And as it turns out, they were not who they said they were. Okay. There's a lot of distrust. You got to show your face. You got to be on video. You got to be on audio. Okay. And ultimately a combination of them both. Right. So get on your Instagram stories, make reels of you talking directly to the camera, right? Jump on a live and learn to speak in an open forum off the cuff without a script, right? I really encourage my students to do live video on Instagram, even when not a lot of people show up, just because it will teach you to be a good speaker. Okay. So, for example, this podcast episode, yes, I have points in front of me. I'm following a little framework, but I don't script these entire episodes, right? I'm not reading. I'm seeing little points and I'm just speaking, right? But I did not emerge from the womb good at speaking. I did not. This is a skill that I have worked really hard on perfecting over a decade, right? So it wasn't just natural, right? And I've talked about this. I was very awkward at first. Like, please scroll down on my Facebook page and find my first Facebook Live because you will be like, who is that girl? I'm just like total stiff, robotic weirdo. Okay. And so this is something that I've learned over time, right? I've learned how to laugh, how to smile, to use expressive body language. And that essentially will make you relatable and memorable. Okay. And again, I'm not a perfect speaker. I say right, like all the time. Sometimes I listen to my podcast episodes. I'm like, oh my God, I need to stop saying right or yeah or I still have work to do. It's still a skill that I work on. Right. And I should take my own advice just to slow down, right? When you slow down, when you talk, you leave more space to speak better. Okay. So again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be you. Okay. Okay. Point number two, this is more strategic. That was more, brand building, personality building. Point number two is strategic, and this is to utilize paid ads to stay top of mind. Okay. So paid ads are truly a shortcut to staying in front of your audience. Okay. Because the reality is, organic social media is a bit of a crapshoot, right? You never know how a post is going to do. I was having this conversation with an HCA student the other day, and she was like, yeah, like I always hear, just post more of what's doing better. But she's like, it's not very predictable because she's like, I had this like carousel post that got tons of reach and people loved it. And I had all these comments. So I was like, great, I'm going to take this carousel post and turn it into a reel. And she's like, and then it flopped. And then I made it a long form post and it did okay. And she's like, there's no rhyme or reason. And truthfully, there isn't, because there's so many things at play with organic social media algorithms, right? The timing, who's online, like it's kind of just a crapshoot, meaning that you never know what's going to do well. And until your account has built credibility, like obviously certain people, once they get to a certain point in their business and they get a certain number of followers, so long as they are creating relevant content, it's like all of their posts just seem to do well. They really start to get favored in the algorithm. That is something that happens. So it's not great news for smaller accounts like me and you, right? Because I've never been favored by Instagram. I've always felt like Instagram hates me, yet I built a really successful business off of social media. Okay. But truthfully, it is a busier world out there, and people are busy and they forget about you, and they might be engaging with a piece of your content and then their baby cries and then they've forgotten about you because now they're on the baby train and they might not come back to your content because it might be another month before the algorithm serves content to them again. And they're like, who's this chick? Who's this dude? I recognize them, but I don't know. Right. And so staying top of mind so that people everywhere they go online, they are seeing your content is a really, really great way to stand out online in, a very busy space, right? Without you hustling on social media all day, right? Obviously, you can repurpose content, which I recommend, but when it's organic content, which I think is important, you're not going to necessarily be staying top of mind because you don't have control over that. And so you can use very inexpensive Facebook and Instagram ads to promote your top performing content so that not only more of your followers see it, but also it helps new people find you as well. Okay. So instead of spending hours creating content after content and posting on Instagram 3, 4, or 5 times a day, you can take full control over who sees your content, how many people see it, and when they actually see it. Okay. Now, your action steps for this is I don't recommend boosting posts through the Instagram app. Okay. And typically you will get a notification from Facebook that is like, oh, your post can get this much more engagement if you just pay this much money. And you can do it right within the app. Now, there is a time and place for those, but I actually recommend getting someone to set up Ads Manager for you, or you do it yourself if you're up for that, right? It doesn't take that long if you are a little bit techie. But for someone who actually knows what they're doing, you could probably get an entire account set up for $300 and then you're good. Okay. And so what you can do is you can look at, okay, so this reel did really good. Cool. I'm going to send it out to the rest of my followers, or I'm going to send it out to the rest of my followers and a cold audience, meaning that an audience who doesn't follow you, right? And you can spend like literally dollars a day. Like you could spend like $3 a day, which is like less than $100 a month, so that more people see your content and so that you know the exact people that see your content. Because here's the thing. You do not have control over who sees your content. I said this before, but I just want to kind of give an example. I have had several students in HCA go viral on Instagram because of a reel or something like that. And it's very exciting. They're like, oh my God, I'm getting all these followers. But ultimately, in the end, they've seen worse engagement because people will just follow because it's getting so much traffic and so much reach, but they're not necessarily people who actually want to engage with your content. So there's no point in getting all these followers who aren't actually your people. Maybe they just thought your reel was funny, but they don't actually care about solving their postpartum depression, right? So this is the problem with organic social media. Even if you have, a post that gets a ton of reach, goes viral, doesn't necessarily mean that the people who follow you from that are going to be the right people. But with Facebook ads, we can be very specific with our targeting. We can target our person, like moms in their 40s, with a certain health condition. We can target those people strategically. Okay. So you could set up a reel, you could set up a video views ad so that people are constantly getting sent to watch it, right? That builds a warm audience, that helps people get to know you. Every time you drop a podcast episode, you could put the clip out to your following and just send it out to your warm audiences for, again, $5 a day for a week. Very inexpensive. And so the goal is to be top of mind so that every time someone goes onto Instagram and Facebook, they are encountering your content. Now, this is something that I also do when I launch, right? When I launch, I do something called retargeting ads. So HCA is open, and then I'm going to send an ad. I don't do this to cold traffic. This is only my warm audiences. So my email list, my Instagram followers, my Facebook followers, and people who've engaged with my content, video views, and website traffic. Okay. So warm audiences, people who've already engaged with my content. And then basically I send them ads that let them know HCA is open. And literally every time they end up on social media, they are going to see those ads. So if they've been thinking about HCA, they're not going to forget about it. They're not going to miss the deadline. They're not going to forget to make a decision because they are seeing it everywhere. Not only are they getting emails from me 2 times a day, they're getting text reminders from me, and they are seeing my ads. And that might sound like a lot, but in today's day and age where there's so much distractions, people can always opt out, right? This is an opt-in process. If people don't want to see your ads, they can say, I don't want to see this ad. Done, right? If they don't want to receive your email, they can just unsubscribe. They don't want to receive your text message, again, they can unsubscribe. And personally, if I'm interested in a program, I actually appreciate the constant reminders because it keeps reminding me to make a fucking decision. Okay? Cool. Okay. So the next thing, and it always comes back to niching, doesn't it, friends? It always comes back to niching. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like this repetitive niche bitch, but it's so important. Okay. The more we can niche down, the more we're going to stand out, right? Because we don't want to be out there selling general health and wellness. Okay. We do not want to be doing that. We don't want to be selling functional medicine. We don't want to be selling dietitian services, naturopathy. Like these things can work in brick and mortar and in-person practices, but online, we really need to niche down, right? Because, for example, maybe I have issues with my acne, and let's say the internet doesn't exist. I'm like, I've been to the doctor. The doctor can't help me, or the doctor prescribed me, these birth control pills. I don't really want to take them. And I'm walking down the street and I see a sandwich board for a naturopathic doctor. I'm like, oh, maybe they can help me. But that's not what happens online. I'm not just going to walk by your sandwich board online, right? I am going to be actively seeking or putting into Google or wherever. I'm going to be like, natural solutions for adult acne, right? So the more specific we can be, the more we are going to get found, right? And I know people have resistance towards niching because they're worried about turning people away, but that's the point, right? You would never develop a skincare product designed to help every skincare issue. You're like, hey, here's my miracle cream that helps rosacea, melasma, acne, fine lines, congestion. Like, you would be like, oh, that's snake oil medicine or whatever, right? You'd be like, no, that's bullshit. You wouldn't believe it. If I've got melasma, I don't want to get the cream that helps everything. I'm going to go buy a specific melasma cream, which I did buy because I got melasma in the last trimester of my pregnancy, just a little bit on my forehead. And I have this very specific melasma cream, and I'm using a green light on it from this weird little tool that Instagram sold me. And it's helping, right? But I'm not going to go get a cream that's designed to help everything. It doesn't make sense. And it can make you seem like if you're out there saying, oh, I can help you with every problem, even though we as educated, oh God, see, I still don't speak very well. 10 plus years of learning how to speak. I still make mistakes, right? It's not meant to be perfect. So if you're out there saying like, I can help you with every problem, and obviously as intelligent and educated health practitioners, what we do has the ability to help so many different conditions, but people don't really get that, right? They want someone who specializes in their specific condition because it's how we've been socially conditioned. We have a hormone problem, we see an endocrinologist. We have a gastrointestinal issue, we see a gastroenterologist. and enterologists. Oh God, somebody help me. Anyways, hopefully you get the point, right? It's just like we are really socially conditioned to look for specific practitioners who specialize in specific conditions. So, a way to stand out is to be very clear with your niche and not only in the problem you solve, but in the human you ultimately help. I have one very specific action step for this step. Download my Choose Your Profitable Niche workbook by clicking on the link attached to this episode. Okay, you can swipe upon this episode, get the link, or just DM me on Instagram or Facebook the words niche workbook. Niche workbook, 2 words, and that will trigger the automation, and my little assistant bot will send you the download link for that. So, the key takeaway for this episode is standing out online is not about being the loudest, the flashiest. It's really just about being unapologetically you. Like it's about being you. It's about showing up in your best self with your personality, being vulnerable, sharing stories, being conversational. It's about being strategic, right? Not posting 5 times a day on social media and TikTok and Instagram and Pinterest. It's about utilizing paid ads, very inexpensive paid ads to just get your content out there. And then it's about solving a very specific problem for a very specific human. And if you go in on all 3 and you stick with it, and what I mean by that is you're not just going to do it for 2 months and be like, that didn't work. You stick with it. This is your business. This is not a hobby. You stick with it, and eventually it will work for you. All right, my friend. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wealthy Coach Podcast. I will see you next Monday, same time, same place, where I help you become wealthy AF.